one and all. Respected Dr. Madhu Sharma, Registrar, GDST College. Respected our worthy guest, Mr. Kiran Sachdev, CEO, co-founder, Nourish. My worthy dear colleagues and dear students. I, Dr. Meenu Gupta, on behalf of IISc GDST College, welcome you all in this expert lecture series on how to plan and launch our startup. As we all are aware that today is the era of innovations and entrepreneurship. Moreover, HRD has also promoted and created Institutional Innovation Council across selected higher education institutions. So the primary purpose is to encourage, inspire, nurture our young students by supporting them to work with new ideas, startups in their formative years. So keeping this view in mind, we request you, sir, for this lecture, and we are fortunate enough that you are accept our invitation and spare your valuable time for us. Thanks a lot, sir. Now I request Dr. Madhu Sharma, Registrar, GDST College, to formally welcome our worthy guest.
Thank you, Dr. Meenu. Well, I find it a privilege to be here amongst the youngsters, as well as one of our distinguished alumnus, Mr. Kiran Sachdev. I so clearly recall the times when he was working probably on some earthquake alarm model. And then finally it worked and he got it patented during his student days itself, which was a great achievement, not only for him, also for the institution. We in SD College always believe in holistic development of our students. At the same time, we are very keen to give all such relevant platforms to the youngsters where they can really develop their skills. They should be given all kind of support is our mission all the time. Anyway, so sometimes it becomes very, it's not as easy for the youngsters to chalk out their plan very clearly at a very young stage. But Mr. Sachdev is one of those bright young minds who could really, who could pave out his future quite at an early stage. All my congratulations to Kendra, and we are really blessed to have you here around. And it is always very nostalgic and very emotional when we see our alumni reconnect with their institution. I believe they also hold a very, very dear place in their hearts once they go out in the practical world. They do a lot of work subsequently. He has acquired his master's degrees and a lot of accomplishments to his credit. But I believe that his bond with SD College must not have ever faded away. We are very grateful that he has reconnected with us today. And for the youngsters, I would say, you take it as an opportunity, a very, very privileged opportunity to listen to him. As we all know, startup is a new buzzword in business fields. And we keep on listening to lots of success stories of youngsters, those who come up with startups and they make big. At the same time, let's not ignore the real fact that is that there must have been lots of such stories which must have started with a lot of enthusiasm but did not achieve success. So our session today is primarily dedicated to sharing the experience of someone who can guide you in the right direction and can make your dreams come true more methodically. So over to Mr. Kiran. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Madhu. It's such a privilege to be here, to be able to talk to the students. I believe you rightly said that I think the journey started at ST, and I owe so much to ST College. I think those memories are etched in my mind forever. I was also a hosteler in the beginning. You know, the first year when I joined, I was actually living in the ST College hostel. I know a lot has changed. I mean, the fancy auditorium that you guys are sitting in right now, it looked very different at our time. You know, I'm talking of 2001 to 2004. And I still remember Dr. Ajay, you know, Professor Ashutosh, Dr. Vaid were the principal at that point. And, you know, it was just so many great things, memories that I cherish and carry. And I think the foundations of whatever I'm able to do and the paths that I chose were laid out in the college. There is no doubt about that. And I'll talk a lot about that, as well as share my story of entrepreneurship, and also try and share some tips and steps that I have learned along the way through founding of the two different companies that I've gone through across my career. So that's going to be today's intention, and thank you so much for inviting me. I know that we have such a great staff now. I mean, so many facilities that have gotten better, so I miss being there in person, but I'm like thoroughly enjoying being able to do this, because we just connected like literally a few days ago, and Professor Ashutosh and Dr. Ajay kind of they were instrumental in making this happen, and I was like, let's just do it in 2-3 days time rather than delaying it, because I might be traveling in the coming weeks. So so here we are. Thank you so much. Now, do we have anybody else joining? I can get started, and we can carry on if that's okay.
No, sir, but just a minute. I want to formally introduce you in front of the students.
Sure. Let's do that. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, and you very well said. Thank you for your inspiring words, and welcome our key speaker. Mr. Kiran Sachdev is the co-founder and CEO at Nourish, a leading creator economy monetization platform that enables anyone to quickly create and sell online courses, webinars, subscriptions with the power of Nourish sale funnels. Led by his efforts and direction, Nourish has over 34,000 academies and 750,000 users from over 45 countries, and was listed amongst the Holland's IQ's top 100 companies in South Asia and GSV Global EdTech Cup Elite 200. He completed his master's in industrial and commercial biotechnology from the distinguished Newcastle University. He co-founded his first venture from the campus in the UK to help Fortune 500 companies like United Technologies and institutional clients from Europe, US, India, and the Middle East launch technology products and multi-million-dollar corporate education products. A serial entrepreneur and an innovator, even during his school years, he had invented, as ma'am said, he has invented as earthquake sensor, making this one of the youngest patent holders in India. Sir was also awarded the Business World's Young Entrepreneur 2020. So I requested for a huge round of applause for this achievement. So we are fortunate enough to hear you. Now, without taking much time, I request you, sir, to enlighten us and share your ideas and guide our students. Thank you so much, and over to you, sir. You are not audible, sir.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you so much for such a nice introduction. I feel humbled, and I think all we are trying to do here is just solving problems. And I think my center focus for today is going to be able to talk to students and also hear about a lot of their opinions, questions, and what they are trying to do. That would make this interactive. And also, before I start, I would just quickly like to ask, what is the profile of the students here? I understood there's a business school profile from some MBA students that we have, some undergraduate students. So is there any other profile in the mix right now? Just helps.
Sir, it's a mixed group of commerce, IT, sciences, and humanities, and both are undergraduate and graduate students.
Okay. So you guys are so fortunate because you have the college now talking about entrepreneurship, and you have this innovation council that kind of gives you the ability to understand how it's done. When we started and when I was in the college, there wasn't any methodical way of learning about starting up, right? I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. The day I joined the college, I knew that one day I'm going to be starting a company. My dad was an entrepreneur, so I had that in mind that yes, it is possible. He ran his company, he left his job at the age of 30, and last 40 years, he's now 70, he's still running his company. It's a factory manufacturing something. And that was instilled in us that it is possible to be done. So what I would do is, the way I've structured this is, I didn't want it to be academic. I wanted it to be interactive. I don't know how the setup is there. I believe you guys should be able to ask me questions as well. I'm sure there are mics that can be passed around later on. So I'll take the first maybe 25-30 minutes to go through a quick introduction, a presentation, and the broad structure of what it means. Before I do that, I'll also tell you that it is possible to learn entrepreneurship. A lot of people question their attendance in events and discussions where entrepreneurs share their stories, their hacks, their experiences, and try and inspire students like you to start up yourself. A lot of you would question, is this even possible? Or, I mean, some people just get it because my dad was an entrepreneur. None of that's true. I have seen hundreds of entrepreneurs who've done far more than I have, and people who have gone really, really successful, built large companies. They all knew that it could be learned. So that's the premise of today's session. What I am saying comes from a lot of experience. I read a lot as well. The one thing that I would want to start with is that even now, for the last 6 years, I've been reading about 38 to 50 books a year, and that's been a number that I've tried to stick to. And even when I get super busy, the number never goes below 30 or 32. I share most of these book recommendations on Goodreads, and they are all centered around three main broad areas. So business being number one, self-development. I read a lot on how to be more productive, how to learn stuff that makes me a better performer, and spiritualism is the third domain that I read quite a bit on. So these three domains, and that's where my belief stems from, that it can be learned. So without any further delay, let me just share my slide deck and just spend the next 20 minutes sharing my story and a couple of steps around how do you start thinking about a startup. And then I'll also, while we are at it, we are going to talk about a few other entrepreneurs that are in my circle or globally known, where you could learn a lot from. So I believe I can share the screen. Let me just try and bring that up. Give me a sec. Okay. Going to make it full screen. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
All right. Okay, brilliant. So what we'll try and do now is just kind of run through, like I said, not many slides, just about 7-8 slides. The idea is that we talk and I share stories. Let me just begin by the first definition of a startup, because since we are talking about a startup, this is a word that a lot of jargon exists around, right? The quirky or the easiest definition that you find on Google when you Google this is, startup is a newly established business. As simple as that, right? I mean, it is a newly established business, and that's how you define a startup. But when you go and look out at startups around, what are the names that come to your mind? I don't know if I can hear you guys, and I want to keep it interactive. Any names that come to your mind, which are the most popular startups in India right now? What do you think of? Is there a mic that these guys can speak into? Is that possible, or that won't be possible? It has to be a... Is that possible? Sorry, I...
Sir,
Okay,
without mic, also students can interact with you.
Yeah, so I mean, can I hear them if they talk? Is there a mic, or I mean, I could go one way also, but it would be lovely if I could hear them.
Yes, you can hear them, sir.
Okay, okay. So, guys, the question for you is, what are the most popular startups that you guys know about? Because it's important to understand, what do you understand uh, with the word startup, and I tailor what I want to talk about based on that. So, which startups have you heard
Hello.
of?
Hello.
Yes,
Hello. Hello.
Raise your hands.
Hello. Hello.
Paytm. Yes, absolutely. Great. Everybody thinks of Paytm, and I think it's a great brand that's been built. Anything else?
Yes.
Boat. Yes. Any other name?
There are so many, just think of it. Yes, please.
Sorry, which one was that?
Grofers.
Grofers. Yes, yes.
Oyo.
Oyo. Absolutely. Mama Earth. Yes, absolutely. Now let's just stop there for 2 minutes and let me ask you, what is the common factor between all these startups? Now, if you could tell me, we have taken 5 or 6 names, right? And they're from very different sectors. Paytm's a finance company. Mama Earth is a D2C company. And please stop me if you don't understand a particular word that I use. D2C is direct to consumer. And then you have spoken about, Boat, which is an electronics company, or gadgets, or let's say devices company. There are so many that we just took the names of. What are the common factors that you could see in all of these? And there are a couple, right? But this is where the understanding of a startup gets deeper. What do you see as the common factor in all of these?
Yes. What is a common factor in all these startups? What do you think about that?
Anything that comes to your mind, guys?
Thought of a problem that existed and tried to solve it through whatever means they had. For Paytm, it was fintech basically. So they essentially established online payment platform that now offers a variety of other facilities as well. But it started with a problem that the the entrepreneur saw and solved it.
That's a great answer. Really appreciate it. Now let's hear about other similarities that you see. It's super important that you get these. This is I don't see even some of the best students being able to grasp this, but great point. They all saw their own ways to solve a problem. Any other point that comes to your mind? What is the common thread running between all these startups? What comes to your mind? Anything else?
So this is
Internet.
internet and demand.
Yes, great points again. Internet and demand. And I would just like to change the word internet to technology, because boat typically is not utilizing the internet. Yes, it uses the internet to sell, but it also uses direct to consumer and multiple other methods to sell. So I would put technology as the keyword, not particularly internet, but great. Yeah, we're doing well. So we've got a problem, technology, and then we've got, demand, right? Anything else that comes to your mind?
So they have identified their target consumers as well as made sure that they have a aggressive marketing strategy, which is like so that to spread the word well.
So you guys went into the micro, I like that, but I want to stay on the macro. I hope you, kind of understand the difference between these two. So we're going deep into something that they did right, and probably they did hundreds of things right. But what I'm looking at, and let me now, take the mantle here to explain this further. Thank you so much for all the great answers. If you see, technology, identification of a problem, solving it well, and there was a demand. People wanted that problem to be solved. These are common factors, but there's another common factor which all of these companies had in common. They all raised external venture capital funding, and all the names that you took, you can go verify, they all raised external venture capital, right? It's an important point, super important, because without this point, they wouldn't have become the companies of the humongous size that they became. Because if you are trying to build a company that accelerates with technology, utilizes technology, all of these factors will get put fuel on the fire if there is an external funding available, right? And all of these factors become more important when you see the change of environment in our country. There is more funding available than ever. There are investors all around. Episodes, or let's say TV series like the Shark Tank have started becoming really popular. So I want you to understand the definition of a startup that I like and I fall into, which is exactly the same as all of these companies. We utilize technology to solve a big problem in the society. There's a heavy demand for it, and we have external funding that we have raised to be able to accelerate our solutions reach to get into every home, right? That's my classic definition of startup. And I believe you could call even somebody starting a Kirana store as a startup based on the definition that I shared on the screen and what Google talks about, right? I mean, let me just kind of jump back onto the screen share that we were doing. So when you look at this slide, you will see that a startup is a newly established business definition, which will apply on anything that somebody is trying to do. It could be a Kirana store, it could be somebody starting a juicing business, somebody starting a small educational institution. A newly established business could be applied to any of those. However, the definition of startup, like I said, technology, key parameter, it's the accelerator, external funding, a huge demand, a problem that you're trying to solve. So you guys helped me put this definition together, and spot on. I think we have a good set of students here. So really like the way you guys kind of put it together. Now, let me introduce myself on to how the story has been, right? Now, me and my co-founder, we started our first company from the campus of Newcastle University in UK. Now, this was right after I finished my degree at SD College, which was a bachelor's in, science with a focus on biotechnology. I don't know if we still have exactly the same degree. I have some fantastic teachers that taught me there. Smriti ma'am, Dogra sir, I'm sure some of them are still there. They did a fantastic job in kind of helping us throughout. And I did my master's after that in industrial and commercial biotechnology from UK. And the campus of Newcastle University, UK, which is actually one of the top universities in England for biosciences, they helped me start my first company with my co-founder, who I met there at the university. So my co-founder's name is Rakhi, and Rakhi and me, we started our first company, which was a consulting company. We were helping technology brands like Carrier Shanghai, education brands like Lisa School of Design from Paris, Transicold from France, Pratt & Whitney from the United States, Otis Elevators again from US, Polaris from US, Eris from Europe, and Nourish being our final brand that we worked on as a captive brand within our consulting company, and then we spun off. What I mean by that is for almost 8-9 years, we were running a consulting company that was helping large brands launch their technology projects or education projects around the world. So some of the stories or some of the names that you read here are the brands that we worked with around the world. And later, I mean, Rakhi and me, we co-founded both these companies, and we also got married. I mean, so we are a husband-wife co-founder duo. There is a 40 people team at Nourish now, and an extended team of about 20 freelance and other project members that also help us from around the world. But we are primarily based out of India. Our clients are based around the world. The story kind of started like this, that while I was at the university, And Rakhi and me, we would always discuss that, we could solve the educational institutions problem of not finding the right target audience in the local countries where they were located. Like Newcastle was one of the top universities, but their labs, which were world class, were empty during the Easter holidays, summer holidays, winter, a lot of periods. So we said, how about we help them launch new products in education, which are not regular degrees, but maybe summer schools, industrial training programs. And that was the first thing we did. We pitched to our university where we were studying, and they gave us an office. They gave us the first project that we picked up, and eventually we ended up helping large companies, the CEOs of Fortune 500. I hope you all know what Fortune 500 companies are. We started working with them around the world to help launch their products and technology brands around the world. So that's how the story of our entrepreneurship started. It wasn't going to be a product company. We weren't a startup in the technical definition of what you just understood from me in the last slide. Because what we were doing at that point of time did not fit in the premise of technology, external funding, a large problem. It didn't have any of that. But it was still a successful business, right? We were doing a few crores of revenue every year. We would be traveling around the world. I mean, through the course of us running Scientity, that was the name of our last company, I have been to about 37 countries. I've worked with some of the best, largest companies in the world. We consulted with the Prime Minister's office of Japan, Shinzo Abe-san's office, for almost a year, based out of Tokyo. We were helping the Japanese government build better relations around the world in the education sphere. So we did a lot of cool stuff, but it wasn't a startup, right? And the day I realized I wanted to have a startup, I wanted to build a startup, we started thinking about technology, a large problem to be solved, and how do we raise external funding. So that's where the story shifted to Nourish, which is the company that we started building alongside Scientity. We didn't leave our existing company. We didn't drop everything and thought that, okay, let's just jump into this startup. We started methodically building the company while we were consulting. So I hired two people only in tech, right? And one of these guys came from Microsoft. He's now a core team member of Nourish. He's the head of technology here, but he was the only guy in the beginning to build the product, right? We started building Nourish as a platform, and we started kind of working on the entire story, the entire problem set. And come fast forward to 2019 is when we raised our first round of external funding, and me and Rakhi in the next 3 months raised another round of funding and jumped completely into Nourish, because the pandemic also hit at that time. And we realized that we didn't want to be in the service business at all. It's the perfect time. We have enough money that we want to kind of jump into a larger product play. So we completely shifted from being a services consulting company to being a product company utilizing technology and external funding in the world. And that's the like a quick version of what we did. Now, like I show you here on the slides, the journey of Scientity taught me a lot. Nothing goes waste, right? Everything's kind of important while you're at it. And there were 3 principles that I learned even before I started Nourish, and these are common lessons that carried from a consulting company. And by the way, this consulting company had also got about 25 employees that were based around the world. And these were brilliant guys helping us build the business further. Now, 3 principles that I learned. First one, which is a master foundation of building a startup, is that it all starts with a problem. It is such a powerful statement that it all starts with a problem, because a lot of people just want to start a company and they don't have a viable problem to solve. They're just doing it because they feel, this is cool to be done. This is, I like it. I've seen my family, face this problem, or I've seen my friends face this problem, or I face this problem. But that's not good enough. When you talk about a problem, you have to see and find or seek a problem that is being faced by a larger set of audience, right? A lot of people face that problem, and the solution to that problem could really solve something tangible. It doesn't need to be a need in the society. That's another myth that I want to break here. A lot of people think that the problem has to be something like people dying in hospitals because there's a drug that needs to be invented. Maybe a camera that will walk with you to shoot you, or a drone that will fly is the only tangible problem. I have a photograph of a girl who's wearing a hat, and she looks like a model on the slide. Hat was solving a problem, and you guys probably won't think about it that way. This is a simple solution to a problem of fashion, covering yourself in heat and also protecting yourself from cold. Some of you guys would be surprised to know that it's a multi-billion-dollar industry to build hats of exactly the same shape and sell them around the world. There are companies that make billions of dollars out of these businesses, right? So first problem that you have to come up with has to have a tangible market size to be able to address. Otherwise, the problem isn't big enough to go after. The three main lessons beyond this fundamental truth of trying to build a startup are that you can learn how to build a startup. There is so much of learning available to us today. In fact, the episodes of Shark Tank, and I'm not talking about the Shark Tank India. I love the show. I just watched maybe a few episodes because a couple of my friends raised money at Shark Tank. In fact, a couple of our client companies who use Nourish also raised, in fact, 3 companies raised funds at the Indian Shark Tank. But I learned so much by watching Shark Tank US, right? I mean, there are so many lessons about how companies utilizing technology and looking for external funding can build large companies. How do they get to build that story around it? And the key is the story. All of this can be learned. And that's such a powerful thing, because if you think about it, the traditional wisdom 20 years ago about building businesses was that you can't build a business unless your family has a lot of money. You can't build a business if you don't have anyone in your family doing business. You can't build a business if you are in a small town, a tier 3 town. You can't build a business if you're in a village. You can't build a business if you are not a technology person yourself. And I think all of those things have been broken down by, I don't know, so many people. I don't come from a pure coding background, and I run a company which has 20 engineers working in it, and we are a pure technology company, right? And I'm not an engineer by background. Like I said, I did my BSc biotechnology and then my master's in biotechnology, but this is a technology company. Anything is possible. So building a startup can be learned, and that's such a blessing. You can't do it alone is the second principle that I learned. Day one, you've got to start finding people who could be complementary in skills with you guys. And it's so important because if you don't find your tribe, if you don't find the people who could have your back, who could handle parts of your business or your startup when you're starting out, you will not be able to do it well. You need to start looking at those people from day one. Now here, another skill, before I go to the last point, there's another skill that comes really, really important here. I personally feel that almost every single one of you, if you can, develop your sales skills. By sales skills, I mean, go on to the stage, try and pitch to people. And it could be anything, right? People who know me from the college days, I don't know, there was Professor Thapar. I don't know if he's still there at the college. I mean, there were so many people who would remember me. I was always participating in every extempore speech competition, debate, declamation. In fact, I was less in class and participating in all of those all the time. The practice that I got from all those things helps you so much, because when I say you can't do it alone, you'll need to first pitch to the first set of friends, the first set of partners, co-founders, team members, and your skills, your ability to be able to talk well, to be articulate, to be able to put your idea across in the right way will go so far with you guys. It's such a core skill. If you gave me a choice that you fail one examination or 2 examinations out of your curriculum, I would happily do that, but I would not want to fail on public speaking, on my ability to pitch, on my ability to, speak well in front of audiences or even 1 or 2 people. It's such a core skill. Start practicing it. that will help you get through the second point of you can't do it alone, because you need to be able to pitch and communicate your ideas. Now, while I say that, I also understand that a lot of people are introverts, right? You understand what the word introvert means. It's a great superpower, right? I don't look at it as a weakness. If you are an introvert, find someone, convince that one person who will become your mouthpiece, who will not be an introvert. And here I have another recommendation. So by the way, I'm sitting in my study, and here is a book. Maybe I don't know if it might be flipped. The book's name is Born to Build. So you guys can write down the name. Born to Build is written by Jim Clifton and Sangeeta Badal. She's a professor at Harvard. Brilliant book that gives you the ability, or the angle to be able to choose the right aspect of building a startup, right? It tells you that, okay, in a startup, you need three main things to be taken care of. What are you good at? You handle that and find other people for the other two parts, right? So Born to Build is the name of book. And the second book by the same publisher is called Strengths Finder 2.0. And like I read a lot, so I recommend a lot of books usually. Strengths Finder 2.0 is written by Tom Rath. And Tom wrote this book because he believes that everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses. And if we play by our strengths, there are much better chances of us getting successful. By that, what he means is that if I'm not good in pitching, I can try and get decent, but I'll stop at a certain point. Rather focus on, if you're good in technology, stick there, stick in that room, start building your code, start looking at your solution or whatever you're trying to do, and keep at it, right? So that's really powerful. So these two books are super important for you to know yourself, and I think this is key. So the third principle that I would jump onto is accelerated learning is the fundamental truth that you can't escape when you are trying to build your startup. And I'm preparing you guys, right? I mean, there are so many formulas and things that I could teach you, and there'll be so many people that will teach you. But in 40 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, we can only go so far, right? So I think this is a meta skill. By word meta, I mean, this is the skill of skills and something that has a top layer on anything. So the ability to learn, and ability to learn through an accelerated pathway that you build for yourself. You're not going to, every time you want to learn business, you'll not go to the business school. Every time you want to learn how to do marketing in a startup, you can't find teachers. Every time you're trying to learn how do you solve a particular problem or how do you build something, you have to hack learning yourself. And as an entrepreneur, I'm telling you that this skill of you loving learning and constantly learning about new things will be your lifesaver, will be your superpower. There's a great book that I just recently read, and it's called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, right? Naval Ravikant is a legendary investor in Silicon Valley. He's an Indian guy, but he lives in New York. And he's invested in iconic companies like AngelList, Teachable, even I think Airbnb and Uber. He was an early investor in tons of large startups, very well known in Silicon Valley and in the US. So Almanac of Ravikant talks about this, and you guys got to read that book. It's about reading. Learning is a superpower, literally a superpower. And I couldn't have been an entrepreneur if I wasn't in love with constant learning and reading, right? So accelerated learning, I would leave you with this, as my most important thought. If you don't remember anything from what I said today, just remember this, that if you build your muscle to be able to learn constantly, you are setting yourself up for success, if not as an entrepreneur, as whatever you choose to be. That's one thing that I would want you to take away from this session, if nothing else. Now, coming to the building of startups, since this session is going to be about, my take on how do you build a great company. So here are, I believe you are able to see these, points, and I'll try and highlight these also. So the most important first step is the problem, right? And there are so many stories. When I was building Nourish, I saw the problem of people not being able to transfer learning beyond the academic institutions. And since I'm in love with learning, my startup was going to be about this domain. So creators are the new breed. Creators usually is the name given to people like coaches, consultants, influencers, celebrities. You all know YouTubers these days, right? So creators, a lot of them have knowledge inside their brains. And, even people like, let's say, a yoga trainer could be teaching anyone around the world, but he can't because he does not have the tech knowledge. He does not have the business skills. So I wanted to build a solution for that problem. A yoga trainer, a dance teacher, a business coach, a leadership coach, a celebrity like Sanjeev Kapoor. So Sanjeev Kapoor works with us right now. If you look at Sanjeev Kapoor Academy, it runs on Nourish, right? Shobha Day, the famous author, runs her platform through our company. Bombay Stock Exchange runs on Nourish to deliver their trainings and their knowledge to any investor in India who wants to improve their stock investment knowledge. Symbiosis University runs on Nourish. So we looked at this problem that there is going to be a time in the future when people should be able to distribute knowledge through online methods, using technology through any of the device that we carry in our hands. And that's what the solution was built around. There's another great example or a story here, the story of Spanx and Sarah Blakely. And this is homework for you guys. Like I said, I love for people to read. Read the story of Sarah Blakely. It's not going to be in a book. Probably Sarah has written a book, but just read about Sarah Blakely. She founded Spanx. She found a problem in the undergarments industry and built a multi-billion-dollar company there. You look at then Howard Schultz. Howard Schultz is the founder of Starbucks. Howard saw a problem that he wanted to build spaces that would have brilliant coffee. He didn't like the coffee anywhere. And people thought the problem was already solved, right? We going to a cafe coffee day or an old traditional coffee house in the US, you'll feel, well, this is decent coffee. Howard had different standards. He wanted to build a place where people would come together, communities would be built. People would, like if you've read the tagline for Starbucks, he was trying to give nurturing to your soul through a coffee shop. And I think he did pretty well, right? I mean, I love Howard Schultz, so much to learn from him. There are so many stories of startup founders, and you look at the depth of any of them, you'll find there was a problem that they were trying to solve. But at the same time, when you look at the problem, you'll have to think of two things. Can this problem be solved? And there could be an earning model behind the solution. So that's called a business model, an earning model, whatever you want to call it. Can there be a business model around it? Like when I was building Nourish, I knew that if I solved that for a yoga trainer, there are multiple ways that we could make money, right? We could, whenever Sanjeev Kapoor Academy sells a course, we take a percentage of that, right? So I knew there is multiple ways of making money there. I could even charge them a SaaS fee, the software licensing fee, and make money from that. So you have to think, is there a model that could help you make money? What are the risks, potential risks involved? By risks, I mean, you might have the goal like Elon Musk to make humankind a multi-planetary species, and that's the problem he's going after. He's saying, as humans, we cannot be restricted to this planet alone, and that's the problem he solves with SpaceX. He says, I have to make humans live on other planets as well. But unless you have like truckloads of investment, you have investors chasing you, it's not an easy problem to go after. So you have to match it up with the scale, match it up with where you stand, and try and solve problems where the inherent risk can be managed and slowly mitigated, right? So that's how you'll have to look at it. The most important thing after these points comes to be the size of the market. If you're building a startup, and like I said, the definition of a startup, technology, external funding, size of the market becomes super important. I think somebody took the name of Oyo. Oyo was going after such a huge market. They said there are lakhs of small hotels that look dirty, that don't have processes. The bed sheets are not even clean. The doors are not properly built. There are so many problems. They don't have a booking website. So the market is so large. Every day, Millions of people are booking hotels. So he said, I'm going to go for that problem because the market size is very large. Paytm said the same thing. The market size for financial inclusion can be immense. India is a growing economy like no other economy on the planet. So I would solve that problem. Both, again, an Indian brand to solve all your technology gadget needs, right? And they keep launching new products all the time. I think the market size, and you have to learn some of these words, like, I don't think so I can go into too much of depth of these definitions with the scope of what we are going to talk about today. Market size is extremely important. Then comes the next most important point. Are you the right team with the right skill sets to be able to solve this market problem? And when you look at that, you'll understand that having a great team becomes a superpower. And when you go to raise external funding, this becomes such an important aspect that you cannot actually make this happen unless you have a great team. And a great team takes you much, much farther than where you can get yourself alone. So, there are so many quotes around it. I can't emphasize enough on this point. Having a great team is an imperative that you should be thinking of from day one. And I just watched a masterclass by Howard Schultz on masterclass.com. Apart from reading books, I also watch a lot of online courses. And Howard taught me something super important. He said, Howard, by the way, is the same guy who founded Starbucks. I just mentioned about him. Howard says that the way you pitch to investors, the way you pitch to your clients, you should have the same kind of vigor, energy, excitement, and effort put on to pitching to your team members, because they also are going to be instrumental in making you successful as much as any other factor. In fact, more important than most of the other factors, you have to put the same kind of energy in getting best team members on board. So super important point here. Now, the next important aspect that you'll have to look at when you're building your business plan for a startup or you're planning for your startup is innovation. Are you innovating? Is there something different in your solution that doesn't exist out there? And the stories that I just told you, Starbucks, when it was conceptualized, he wanted it to look very, very different. It needed it to have a very different flavor of the coffee. He went into Sumatra, Kenya, Colombia, around the world to find and dig for the best beans. They were the first company that started selling the coffee equipment, the coffee drip coffee systems, the mugs, and you have a Starbucks in Chandigarh now, so you'll know all of the merchandise they sell. They were the first ones to crack that business model. And a lot of people don't understand that Starbucks has more money in their bank than an actual bank. Do you know how? Anybody knows about that? This is a very interesting thought. They have more money than a bank with them at any given point of time. One of the largest banks in the US does not have as much money as Starbucks carries at any given point of time. And interestingly, they don't have to pay a single rupee interest on that. If a bank keeps your money, you have to pay interest on that. But when Starbucks keeps your money, they don't pay any interest to you. You know what that is? Their wallet system. I'm sure some of you are Starbucks wallet fans. You upload money to buy drinks in the future, and they give you a lot of benefits to be able to do that. At any given point of time, they have close to $3.5 to $5 billion in their wallets, sitting there with no interest commitment for anyone. And this is a money that's definitely going to be used for you guys to be able to buy your coffee. So that's the power of how the guy innovated at every given point, right? This is breakthrough innovation. And you look at any company, you'll see the key to their success is going to be innovation too. So super important point. You can't have a good story, can't have a good company unless you bake this in. Innovation will also help you to build a huge entry barrier. What is an entry barrier? Again, a word popular in the startup world. And sorry, I'm not able to hear you guys. Is there a question that you would like me to answer, or can I carry on just for next few minutes and then we can jump into question answers?
Yes, sir, you can carry on. They will
Okay.
ask at the end of the session.
Okay, sure. So just maybe another 5 to 10 minutes and then, we'll jump into the question answers. Now, entry barrier means if you have built a solution, Is it super easy for somebody else to just come the next day and build something similar? Or it's going to be a bit of a barrier? People will have to struggle to build what you built, right? That's called an entry barrier, and an entry barrier should be high. If you apply for patents, if you have a great product, all of that kind of make sure that you have a good entry barrier around your product, and people are not going to be able to copy you with ease. So that's an entry barrier. The next point here is going to be scalability. Super important. What does the word scalable mean? And the word scalability and traction are kind of joined with each other. The word scalability means, can your venture very quickly, with the help of technology and external funding, reach out to millions of people? It should be able to impact millions of lives, hundreds of thousands of lives. The scale of the size of the market that you could reach quickly should be very large. It's not the same as size of the market, right? You could have a very large size of the market, but very tough to scale. Let me give you one example of that sort. Fitness gyms, right? Super large size of the market. Almost everybody likes to work out, or every second person would like to go to a gym. Every third person would like to go to a gym. But let's say I was starting a gym chain, like a physical chain of gyms. Is it scalable? It is, but it's not as scalable as, let's say, Cult Fit, that's also delivering classes online, right? Because Cult Fit, within a day, can be teaching millions of people sitting in their homes. Whereas a physical gym, and Cult Fit all started with the physical gyms, they in the pandemic, they experimented with both the methods. They became even more scalable because they went online. So scalability in startups is the key factor. I can't stress enough on it. Because the more scalable your venture is, the more traction you'll be able to get. So what does the word traction mean? Traction mean, how big is your impact? How many customers, users, clients, end users? I mean, there are multiple words in the world of startup for this. Have you acquired? That's your traction. How far along are you on your journey? That's what the word traction kind of means. So overall, I think I would like to kind of wrap up my map of success here at this point. These are the most important factors when you actually go about it. And here I have another interesting book recommendation. Like I said, I'm sitting in my library, so there'll be tons of books, but this one is super good. It's called Funding Your Startup and Other Nightmares by Professor Dhruv Nath. Now, Professor Dhruv Nath is a friend. He teaches at MDI Gurgaon. Some of you would know MDI Gurgaon. Great book. Funding Your Startup solves your questions on how do you actually think about all these things in a methodical way. And the book has stories of almost 10 to 15 great startups who raised a lot of funds and who kind of did well. So Funding Your Startups is a good read, from an Indian ecosystem point of view. So another one that I would like you to leave with. Now, the next 3 slides is just quickly about ourselves. We are a creator insight economy play. So creators are people like Sanjeev Kapoor, Shobha Day. There are coaches, influencers, companies, and I've mentioned some of the things here as well. So when I define my traction, I define it like this, and I wanted to give you a real input or insight into this. Is a slide from my deck. So we raise funds. I've raised funds from multiple funds. To just give you an example, I have, almost Inflection Point Ventures, Pentathlon. I mean, close to about 35, 40 external investors and funds on my cap table, including some amazing names like KRS Jamwal, who's the heir of the Jammu's royal family. He's also the executive director at Tata Industries. He's invested in Nourish. We've got Andrew Holland, who's the CEO of Avendus Capital. I have funds like Pentathlon Ventures, Inflection Point Ventures, to Rockstud Capital, 100x.vc. Some of you might have heard of the names. They've all invested in Nourish. The way I display my traction to them, which becomes a holy grail, is this way, where I say, I have close to 775,000 users on my platform. They come from 45 countries. We've grown 330% in monthly users in the last 1 year. I also have creator academies, which are Bombay Stock Exchange, Grohe, American Standard, GeoGenX runs their platform on us, Symbiosis. So the way I kind of build the story, all of the points that I mentioned to you, on this slide is what constitutes my deck. This slide is the holy grail of you being able to build a good startup, right? So I would like to kind of end my conversation the one way, discourse that I've been talking about, and I would love for you guys to now ask me questions. I think that's going to be super amazing, because I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think? And I'm sure you have tons of questions on your mind.
Please, students, you are requested to please have your query with the sir. Whatever came to your mind. Any questions regarding startups, regarding funding?
Come on, guys. I've been always one of you, right? I mean, I was sitting on the other side a few years ago, is all I remember. So ask questions. It's key. It's super important.
Yes, yes, please.
So you mentioned Howard Schultz, and I've read about him in a book that was about human psychology, basically. So what he did was, apart from just great coffee, he created an experience. He created this training for his employees so that they would behave in a certain different manner than the other baristas. So, how important you feel is the knowledge of, uh, you know, basic human psychology in the business world? How important it is to get into the psyche of people, because as you said that you need to know a problem, but it doesn't have to be a need. You can create a need. I mean, there are many startups that have created needs. So how important you feel?
It's a great question. Sorry, what's your name? I didn't catch it.
I'm Ishita, sir.
Okay, great question, Ishita. Let me try and take it from my angle. Before I answer your question, I want to give you a few more examples. Have you heard of a company called Zepto? Anybody who's heard of a company here called Zepto, let me just give you a quick, background on Zepto. Zepto was founded by two kids whom I know personally. Why I call them kids is because these guys were in their 12th standard in 2020, right? They were applying for, in beginning of 2020, they just finished their graduation, and like school, high school, 12th standard, and they were admitted into Stanford University in the US, along with a client of mine, Shaurya Sinha. And these two guys decided that they had a great startup idea. They didn't want to go to the university, and they dropped out of Stanford and started Zepto. Their parents live in Singapore. They both moved to their nani's house and some other relatives' house in Mumbai and started the company from there. Just 2 years, the company's now touching 6,500 crores valuation, right? Historic in under 2 years, right? This is unbelievable. Do you think in the school these guys got any training on human psychology? My question is super important, and you'll be surprised to know the age of an entrepreneur now is getting constantly down and down. You know why? Because these young kids coming out of school understand that you can learn swimming by jumping into the water. They find the right guys who have a great understanding of human psychology. They're only good at something, one thing or the other. They keep bringing those teams on board. In fact, even Harvard had some I don't know if you've read his book, Pour Your Heart Into It. That's Howard Schultz's biography, or that's his account of how he built Starbucks. I've read the book, and he talks about, to understand that human psychology, he had some of the best guys in the domain, who were guiding him on the experience, who were constantly teaching him about the best coffee, who were teaching him about how do you train people. Obviously, he had a lot of those qualities. He's a constant learner. I mean, he's reading, he's meeting people, he's traveling around the world, he's hiring some of the best people, anywhere. And all of that gives him an edge. But the key is to be able to collaborate and find people who can bring what you're looking for. And that's where, if you remember my 3 point, I said you need a team. And the last point I said, you need to be a constant learner. But here, the important thing to remember is you can't be a learner before you start jumping. When I'm in the game of running a company, I'm learning alongside. By that, what I mean is, if I want to learn butterfly style swimming, I'll have to get in the water. I can't say I'll learn butterfly sitting in the cafe or in the gym. There's no way. Got to get in the water and then learn. So psychology becomes super, super important. It drives a lot of decisions in business. But my take on this is, don't make it a learning exercise. Academic stuff only goes so far. I'm reading now while I'm running my company. So I think, to answer your question in one word, it's super key. But the way to crack that problem would be to find people and learn while you're at it and understand your customer better every single day, analyze their data. But great question. Thank you. Thanks, Ishta, for that.
Yes, please, anybody else? Come out.
Sorry, is there a question?
I personally have one question, but you very well answered in your PPT that on daily basis we heard about the term startup innovation. So is it some inherent quality or we can learn with the passage of time? It can be learned, but you answered me that yes, it can
No,
be.
absolutely can be learned. And this is a brilliant question. It can be learned. And I think what, as educational institutions, we'll have to also start teaching people is how do they learn by themselves through their life. Because now the education cannot end at the end of your 3 years at college, 4 years at college, or your master's degree where it ends. It has to be constant. The world is changing so rapidly with technology that there is no other way for you but to constantly learn. And just one thing that I want to say here in terms of learning is, the best formula that I have seen to work in learning is, if you're trying to do something, look at the world's best guy who's already doing that and get as close to his way of doing it as much as you can. Learn everything about it, the rights and the wrongs, steps, everything. Copy him to the T. And once you copied him really, really well, now try to innovate. But the way to do this world class is to copy the guy who's already done it really, really well. So reading biographies, learning about the problems you're trying to solve, like when you're building a cafe, learning about some of those things. And Howard Schultz says this also, that he used to visit those cafes in Italy. That's where he got the idea, where baristas would be like families, they'll know everybody's name. So he was analyzing what was happening in some of the best places in the world and applying that somewhere else. So this is called modeling in the world of learning, is super important.
Yes, please.
Sir, I have one more question. Considering the fact that now this startup world has become I'd say, so competitive. There are hundreds of success stories, but beyond that, there are a lot of people who actually do not succeed or they face setbacks. So you personally would have faced certain setbacks while going through your journey. So what would you advise to students like us who are maybe thinking of some startup or may be entrepreneurs at some point, how to face setbacks? Because I think it is something sometimes people take setbacks as, okay, I cannot do it anymore. So
Yeah.
how to face failures?
Again, a great question. My take on this is that setbacks are super good. That's the time you learn. There is no failure in life. There is only learning. And it's like, if you're trying to learn, I took the example of swimming. I like sports, let's say tennis, right? Let's say you go to play with really good players and you get beaten every day. Would you call it a setback? No, it's not a setback, right? I mean, it's the process of you getting world class. It's the process of you getting really, really good. And unless you're getting beaten every single day, you'll never become world class. So every time you fail, it's a matter of pride. It's a matter to get happy about, because now you've learned something more. And it's very popular. Beyonce, I mean, we know Beyonce, the famous singer. Before she found the song Hello, she had written probably 130 songs and failed. None of them were a hit. Setbacks, right? No, that's her honing her craft. That's her getting better. That's her shining, polishing herself. Zuckerberg built, Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, built probably 7 more technology tools, including, and you can read about it, like a restaurant software to so many things, even by his first, second year in the college. And he failed at every single one of them. Obviously, he was failing and then he got there, right? So I don't think so it's bad at all to fail. You should actually have the freedom to fail. You should feel happy about failing because you're trying more. And people who go there in the tennis court every day, get beaten every day by the best players, are the only ones who actually one day come back and start beating everybody else. So that's my take on failure. Never look at it as a bad thing. And your question on competition, there's a great book called The Blue Ocean Strategy by Professor Kim Chan. He teaches at INSEAD. It's a classic literature. It talks about competition is not a great thing. You should not worry about it. You should innovate so that you operate in blue oceans. It's a great book. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, a lot of MBA classes have it as their curriculum around the world. I'm not sure if it's part of your curriculum here at Punjab University. But read Blue Ocean Strategy, and then there's a great book by Peter Thiel called 0 to 1. Peter Thiel is the founder of PayPal. A lot of you must have heard of PayPal. So he was co-founder of PayPal with Elon Musk, and he now is one of the board members at Facebook and an iconic figure in the Silicon Valley. Read up about 0 to 1 and Blue Ocean Strategy. Shouldn't worry about competition. Competition is good. You can innovate and evolve over time. Don't worry about it too much, is what I would say.
Yes. Yes, please stand up and. Yes. Where to invest money? He's asking where to invest money.
I didn't get the question. Whether to?
Where to invest money?
I mean, how do you raise funds? How do you get investment? Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you're lucky you are kind of in college right now. There are so many investors now, so many funds that could really help you get your first check, right? Like I said, 100x.vc. 100x.vc invested, they were our first investors. The first investment they did was only about 25 lakhs. And, now they do their first investment as 1.25 crores. They invest in college students also who have just got an idea and maybe a MVP. So look at 100x.vc, look at angel investors on Let's Venture, Angel List. There's a platform called Tyke. TYKE. You can go there and try and raise funds. There is Thai Chandigarh also. I know that, the Indus entrepreneurs, the group in Chandigarh called Thai. Then there is Punjab Angels. I mean, I could keep talking about them. So Google up on some of these names, look for angel investors, because the first check usually comes from angels. But like I said, before you go for your first check, my take would be get some traction. Build a product, build even an MVP, get a few people to believe in your product, get them to test it out, get them to buy, and then go and look out for investment. So there's plenty of opportunities now.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And I'm very much impressed with the 3 principles you shared. Just personally, I feel it's an excellent and fantastic idea. The books you shared, this is our students' need. And I'm sure they learned a lot through this session and hopefully they put into the practice. Now, I sir formally thanks you. Anything else you want to share our students? All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you on behalf of IISc GVDST College. I would like to formally thank you, sir. And we are really very grateful to you for giving valuable insights to our students. Really, sir, it's our privilege to listen to your motivational and inspiring talk on startups. I'm also thankful to our President, Shri Upgradation Sharma ji, for organizing such visionary talks. I'm also thankful to our principal, Dr. Rajesh Sharma, for giving this opportunity and always encourage us, motivate us for organizing such sessions. My sincere thanks to Dr. Madhu Sharma, Registrar, DGDSP College, for sparing your valuable time, ma'am, for this session and grace the occasion with your presence. I'm also thankful to our technical team, Mr. Manish from IT department and Mr. Keshav for providing technical assistance throughout the session. Thankful to my patient, listener, my students who are present here and make this session super successful. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Pleasure to be able to talk to you all, guys. All the best, and I really hope to see a lot of entrepreneurs, coming out of this batch and people sitting here. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.